Hi, Shalom. This video contains mentions of physical abuse, a brief mention of sexual abuse, and murder. Also, the use of outdated language is for historical purposes only and does not reflect my own views. Okay, I got really behind with production work, and realistically, I'm not sure how soon I'll be filming all the other videos I have planned, but I stumbled upon this topic completely out of the blue, and I was just absolutely compelled to throw a video together. Today, I am going to be talking about a subject that has been swept under the rug for decades, and that is industrial schools for Black children. The troubled teen industry in general is an important subject that I'd like to address at some point, but things have always been even more problematic for Black children. I'll be talking in particular about the Alabama Industrial School for Negro Children, often referred to as Mount Meigs. That's the name I'll be using for it from here on out. The school was founded in 1907 by Cornelia Bowen and started out as a legitimate residential school for Black children. Black children were often being tried as adults, often over really stupid things, and being put in adult prisons. Bowen's goal was to get children out of adult prisons and, in the case of legitimate behavioral issues, provide actual support. Bowen had gotten a master's degree, and her thesis was entitled Juvenile Crime Among Negroes in Alabama. Now, in the school's early days, it was actually a really great thing. There was a community center, kids were taught cooking, housekeeping, sewing, parents were educated on healthy child rearing, so it was actually fairly progressive for the time. Unfortunately, this story takes a really dark turn. The state government took over the facility, and it became the stark opposite of what Bowen was trying to do. It turned into a glorified juvenile prison. The concepts of support and rehabilitation for inmates were slowly getting off the ground, but primarily for white children. A white child and a Black child could have committed the exact same infraction, and I guarantee the system would be 1,000 times harder on the Black child. And that's if the child even did anything. As you'll see in the accounts I'm going to share, many times children had no idea what happened to land them at Mount Meigs. Now, there is very little information to be found on all of this. If by some chance you happen to be a Mount Meigs survivor or were in a similar facility and want to share your story, please reach out to the journalist Josie Duffy Rice. Ms. Rice hosts a podcast on the subject entitled Unreformed. She's collecting stories from any survivors who are willing to share, and I'll put the email address in the video description. She'd really appreciate it. So one of the most disturbing things about this is how recent this was. I'll be sharing accounts from some survivors. One survivor is a man named Lonnie, who is roughly my dad's age. He was incarcerated in 1961 when he was just 11 years old. I keep thinking about the photos I've seen of my dad when he was a kid, and while no family's perfect, both my dad and I had backgrounds that most people would consider pretty average. He had a dog, he played catch with his brother, my uncle, the things every kid should have a chance to do, and by extension, I had a lot of the same experiences. But if my dad and I were Black, we could have had very different lives. Denny, a corrections officer with more progressive views, was horrified when he started working at Mount Meigs. He'd worked in correctional facilities with white teenagers and was appalled by the conditions at Mount Meigs. Abuse and torture were regular occurrences. Children did not get enough to eat, and you could not call the food they did have decent. The kitchen was full of vermin. Also, the dilapidated buildings were fire hazards. Denny reported this situation to the state several times, and not surprisingly, nothing ever happened on that front. Children who were brought to Mount Meigs were not granted the right of due process. They were not given the right to talk to a lawyer, and in some situations, they wouldn't even see a judge. Jenny Knox is another Mount Meigs survivor. She was removed from her home and put in several foster homes before moving in with an abusive aunt. She moved in with a different aunt who was more loving, but after an attempt to run away at age 12, the school contacted the previous aunt, who on paper was still listed as Jenny's legal guardian. Now, if this had been a white child, the staff would have most likely just sent the kid home, or maybe providing counseling and other support if it was deemed necessary. As said, the differences in how Black and white people are treated for the same situation is ridiculous, to say the least. Quote from Jenny Knox: "I was not drinking, getting drunk, being loose in the streets or whatever. I went to class. I didn't know anything about no boyfriends and all that different kind of stuff. I didn't understand. It still bothers me. A lawyer? I didn't know anything about no lawyer. I didn't know I needed one." Jenny was sentenced to 18 months at Mount Meigs simply because she missed her mom and wanted to find her. Survivor Mary Stevens was forced to work to support her family and wound up missing a lot of school. She was sent to Mount Meigs for violating truancy regulations. I reiterate that these situations would have been handled differently if these girls were white. When kids were transported to Mount Meigs, they had no idea what was going on or where they were going. In many cases, the children were in handcuffs while in the car. And as said, most of these children had only done minor things, if they had done anything at all. Quote from survivor Johnny Bodley: "I had to sit in the city jail for 3 months. Then they shipped me to Mount Meigs. That was on July 22nd, my 15th birthday." Quote from Lonnie, who I mentioned earlier: "It was scary, just to go down that road. Then you ride slowly down this 2-lane street, pear trees on both sides. You riding slowly. None of us know where we was going. We go through this gate where the gatekeeper were. Vehicle stopped. They signed me in. Then we moved slowly on down that road. Then you start seeing all these cottages, these brick buildings with bars and things on the windows. You'd take off all of your civilian clothes. You'd turn them in. You would turn in any properties or anything you had in your pockets." Jenny Knox gave horrifying accounts of the sexual abuse that occurred starting on day 1. I couldn't spend much time on that part of the topic without having panic attacks, so that's all I'm going to say about that. After surrendering their clothes and whatever else the children had on them, they would be given old military fatigues, which would be the only clothing they would receive while they were there. Mount Meigs inmates frequently witnessed the murder of their peers. Historically, it was not unusual for children to have friends who, died of polio or diphtheria or something, before they could treat all that stuff. And that is very unfortunate, don't get me wrong. But I have to imagine that losing a friend or an acquaintance to a disease is very different from losing a friend to murder. Like I said, disease is unfortunate, but it's not an entity that can choose what's right or wrong. People can choose, and white adults were choosing to murder Black children. Naturally, solid statistics on the number of deaths at Mount Meigs are nowhere to be found. In Judaism, when someone dies, we say, Zechorono Livaracha. It means, may their memory be a blessing. Zechorono Livaracha. May their memories be a blessing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.